Thursday evening at Astro World, a sold-out two-day event at NRG Park. An estimated 50,000 people were in attendance. The dead ranged in age from 14 to 27. A look now at the weather forecast in Edmonton, clearing this afternoon, high of 7 degrees. In Calgary today, increasing cloudiness, clearing late this afternoon, high 7. Right now in Calgary, it's 6 degrees. In Edmonton, it's +4.
I'm Nora Young. This is Spark. At one point this past week, I had a very bad day. Some bad news, a stressful situation, nothing that wasn't just, life stuff, but somehow I couldn't shake the emotional grip it had on me. And even though I know some strategies, get some exercise, breathe, do cognitive behavioral therapy, I couldn't seem to actually use them. What if I'd had a little digital help in my pocket, an app to prompt me and help me get out of my fixated mental loop? Would that have helped? Or would it be the mental health equivalent of Microsoft's Clippy? It looks like you're trying to get out of a funk. Would you like help with that? At the same time as mental health concerns have grown, especially during the pandemic, getting access to in-person mental health support can be out of reach financially, or where it's covered can involve long waits. But can digital technology really fix that? Is it even a technical problem? So today, a look at the potential and limits of mental health.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Getting settled here. One of the things that happened during the pandemic is that a lot of therapy switched to online sessions over video conferencing tools.
Previously, I had worked with a really wonderful psychologist, and we had met face-to-face for a number of years, and I had talked with her and talked with other professionals and people in my personal life about my feelings about telemental health care services and how it was never something I thought that I would want to do or pursue, for the same reasons that I never wanted to take online coursework when I was in undergraduate and graduate school. I just thought that it would be depersonalized and dehumanized, and it would lose an element of interpersonal connection and communication. But then during the pandemic, when I, in my very privileged position of being able to have the choice of whether to continue receiving therapy online or making the choice to walk away from it when it wasn't possible to meet face-to-face with my psychologist, decided that I would try it out.
This is Emma Bedora Highland. She teaches in the Communication Studies Department at Texas Tech University. Her new book is called Therapy Tech, the Digital Transformation of Mental Health Care. Emma writes about the many emerging digital technologies marketed as mental wellness tools and what true access to mental health services should be like. She also shares her own experience with therapy and making the switch from in-person to virtual care.
I didn't really find as much gratification or satisfaction from those sessions as I did when we had worked together face-to-face. But again, I believe that for me, I made the correct choice in continuing my treatment, even though it was virtual.
While that hesitation about going from in-person sessions to teletherapy was a common feeling for many already receiving treatment, the pandemic also led to a surge in demand for mental health services among new groups.
So what we know is that prior to the pandemic, there were unprecedented levels of anxiety, depression, subclinical mental distress, mental disorders increasing globally. But the research and the data that we have now also tells us that largely due to the pandemic and isolation and fears about coronavirus itself, we're now seeing even higher levels of depression and anxiety and other mental illnesses and disorders. So for those persons who are in need of mental health care interventions and services and resources, more attention is being paid to ways that we can get those services and those tools into the hands of people who need them. But at the same time, we haven't totally remedied disparities in the accessibilities of various technologies. So when we rely upon technology to provide health and healthcare related interventions, we're still seeing some problems there and some incongruity between the amount of care, especially mental health care services that we would like people to have and what they're actually still receiving.
And so how does the mental health care gap affect people differentially? I mean, some people have greater difficulty accessing mental health care or may need more mental health care.
Right. So what we do know is that in the United States, it continues to be primarily young, white women, middle and upper class receive the highest levels of mental health care services and interventions. And the same has continued throughout the pandemic. So we haven't seen growing accessibility with large-scale efforts to get services into the hands of other populations who do need them and who truly would benefit from them. So people who are marginalized due to ethnicity and race, people whose socioeconomic status has historically and today made it impossible for them to be able to pay for the services of mental health care providers. People who just really don't still fulfill that mold of the typical person who we imagine getting the services. So that's still where we are right now.
Right. So in your book, you're primarily looking at sort of off-the-shelf mental health tech that's marketed to consumers. Can you tell me just a bit about the kind of range of technologies that you look at and the range of things that are out there?
Yes, absolutely. There are so many direct-to-consumer mental health care technologies. In the book, I analyze ones that you can get for free or for very low cost through the Google or iTunes stores, smartphone applications that you can download. I also look at therapeutic chatbots, which are powered by varying levels of sophisticated artificial intelligence. Again, those can also be downloaded for free or at very low cost, or downloaded for free and then you pay for additional complimentary services through them. I also analyze telemental health care services, which is more so traditional mental health care. It's just that mental health care services are delivered via a screen. And I do also talk about social media platforms and the ways that those technologies and the algorithms that make them function and work have facilitated new ways of understanding the mental health of users of those technologies. So in the book, for example, I talk a little bit about how Facebook can, what I say, manufacture mental health related data and information about users by analyzing content that's uploaded and trying to decipher whether or not people potentially are intending to harm themselves or others.
I think at one point in the book you say that there's something close to 23,000 mental health apps out there. Do you think this suggests there's some kind of almost a gold rush of people rushing to get into the area of providing mental health technology?
Absolutely. It is a growing industry, and the latest statistics that I could find actually estimate and ballpark that figure at somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 applications. And the reason that there's some discrepancy there, and we're not really sure what the numbers exactly are, is that the people who make them are working in a largely unregulated field. And so they can label them and make largely whatever claims they want about them and say that they should be housed and marketed as health apps, or they should be considered lifestyle apps. Sometimes apps get put on the stores that you can get and then they get taken off quickly. So that's why we have this fluidity in terms of the number of apps that are available.
One of the primary claims of mental health tech is that it increases access to mental health care. Access is, as you suggest, a real problem in that it's often either out of reach financially, or if the cost is covered, you can have long wait times to access it. But you take issue with this promise of access. So can you explain that a bit for me?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the time when we think about and talk about access, even in medical fields and medical technology fields, one of the things I've noticed as I conducted field work at industry conferences and in my conversations, my interviews with people who work on various mental health technologies, is that they think about access as having one dimension. And that dimension is really, is it something that people can get their hands on quickly? So for example, when we talk about smartphone applications, the creators, the advocates of those applications would say to me, well, we want something portable. So if people are having a panic attack or experiencing acute anxiety, they can just pull it out of their pocket and do a meditation or a deep breathing exercise wherever they are. So that's one way of thinking about access. But one of my arguments is that we really need to think about accessibility as having multiple dimensions, because if we think about access as just the portability of a tool, we're not thinking also about usability and feasibility of use. Do people have the requisite resources to be able to do things like purchase a smartphone, to be able to pay for the data to download an app, to be able to pay a subscription to have this app, which we assume that so many people can use as needed, whether they are home or in transit. Accessibility really should be understood multidimensionally. And one of my other arguments is that by not having that multifaceted conceptualization of what access truly entails, we forget to think about people who are left out of our large, broad imaginary of who would benefit from these tools. We don't think about people who don't have the economic or financial resources. We don't think about people who don't see themselves depicted in the technology. So we end up just focusing upon a slice of the population that can benefit from mental health care technologies, but not so many other populations that would also benefit.
Indeed, one of the points you make is that almost as a result of the fact that the people who use these technologies tend to skew towards young, white, and women, that sort of perpetuates the way these technologies are designed because that's who the market already is.
Absolutely. The industry workers I've spoken to, they are technologists. Some of them are also healthcare providers. Some of them have worked in mental health care fields. But fundamentally, these are businesses. They're motivated by the desire to make money. They talk about their power users as being young, largely white women, and trying to figure out how to better market to them because they have to make money in order to survive. So I don't think that it's necessarily that they don't want to help more people. It's just that they do tend to be narrowly focused upon economic and financial success and stability.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to using these types of technologies, given the reality of cost and the reality of wait times for in-person therapy, can't we argue that it's better than nothing?
That's a great argument, and it's something I think about all the time. What I've come to realize is that I think we can both say it's better to have something than nothing, but also still be critical of the technologies and tools that are available to us. So, for example, on the one hand, I think that more people would benefit from true face-to-face therapeutic interventions and therapy and services delivered interpersonally and not necessarily screen-based. At the same time, given the context of the COVID pandemic and other matters related to accessibility, it's better, of course, to say even screen-based therapeutic modalities are better than nothing. When it comes to artificial intelligence, AI-powered therapeutic chatbots, and the smartphone applications that I also write about in the book, my fear, though,